First, I'd like to thank UNIAPAC and Ma'am for holding the conference in Beirut and for bringing such an impressive audience to our country, despite the political uncertainty that we've been going through, especially at this time in Lebanon and in the region. I will be talking about the legislative role of the government and also the role of business groups and how they affect legislation and whether this type of impact from business group is acceptable. Is it, do we want it to continue? Is it something that contributes to the well-being of the citizens and to the economy? First of all, I would like to start by identifying three main categories of legislation and regulatory intervention that affect entrepreneurs and markets. First, we have the laws and regulation on the economy as a whole, on the structure of the business sectors and the impact on the growth and development. The second, which is at a lower level, is the legislation that directly affect the business environment. And the third is the regulatory action that seeks to meet the demands of interest groups. Now, of course, at the third level, the most important aspect of this is the lobbying effort by pro-business groups and by the civil society. Now, what do we have to look at when we are talking about the lobbying effort by, if we say, both sides of the equation? First and foremost, obviously, we have to look at the welfare of the citizens. Second, we have to look at the balance in the economy. And of course, from the point of view of the business community, we have to look at their interest within a certain value system that does not conflict with, let's say, their ability to operate and grow in an economy. Of course, the impact analysis that has to be done when we're doing this lobbying or this impacting of the legislative process has to be done in a way where we have to take into considerations morality and the value system and not only objective elements. Now, if we look at the case of Lebanon and our ability to compete, we see that we have actually failed quite miserably here. The global competitive index that you see shows us that at all levels where there is a need for government participation, we are ranked at the bottom of the list. Whenever it is left to the private sector to operate, like when in terms of finance, banking, we are up there in the top tier. Why are we there? What has happened to our political system or to our legislation that makes us look so miserable in terms of competitiveness? This is another study that's done by IFC on Lebanon's overall rank, 95 out of 172 countries. Well, what has happened is that our policymakers should have been drawing on a tradition of efficiently managing a free enterprise system. I mean, we have actually adopted the precepts of market-based economy since inception. And our policymakers should have built on this broad head start to develop a vision as well as the appropriate legislation that would have placed the post-conflict economy back on the path of growth and prosperity. Yet, what the business sector is currently enduring is a three-pronged jeopardy. Our economy has inordinately dependent on capital transfer for its well-being. The protracted legislative lethargy has thwarted the modernization of laws and regulations, and thus undermined efforts to integrate the economy within the emerging global trade and investment order. Actually, that is a result of a lot of political infighting, of confessionalism that has put all legislation, especially the legislation that affects the economy or that is related to investments on the back burner and giving priority to the political infighting within Parliament. The third reason is that the fiscal drag, as we are suffering from a very high level of debt, one of the highest in the world. We have now a debt to equity, a debt to GDP ratio of around 140%. And it was about 4 years ago at the level of 180%. And that is a crippling level of debt for such a small economy. So the fiscal drag has rendered fiscal policy quasi-ineffective and consequently consigned the economic policy almost entirely to monetary authorities. Of course, as we have heard the governor of the Central Bank of Lebanon speak about the policies that they have enacted, we have been protected against the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. We have been protected against this ineffectiveness of the economic policies, and we have been only been guided by the soundness of a monetary policy. Okay, in business legislation, the principles that lay the foundation of our economic system, namely the sanctity of private ownership of personal and business assets, the freedom of the movement of capital, and non-intervention in the interplay of market forces were never questioned. That constitutes our prime competitive advantage compared to nearly all economies in the region. However, here again, legislators and policymakers should have capitalized on these established principles in order to create a business environment that should have acted as a much stronger magnet for foreign direct investment. Rather, the business sector currently has to bear the high cost of dealing with the public administration, combined with a reluctance to reduce red tape where possible, political opposition to administrative reform, and lack and will to fight corruption. A third area of legislation and regulation, and certainly the most controversial, relates to the state's response to the pressure and lobbying of interest groups. In a democratic system of government, interest groups should be expected to put forth demands for legislation and lobby for them. But it is certainly up to the state to balance the costs and benefits of any legislation it contemplates to enact in response to these demands. Obviously, this is where the role of impact analysis should come in order to try to balance the various interests of the lobbying groups. I mean, when I say lobbying groups, a lot of people look at it in a negative way. I mean, in the media, the word lobby has been vilified as being something that is unacceptable, something that is negative, whose impact on legislation is bad. Well, obviously, we are talking about lobbying from various points, from opposing entities, from opposing philosophies, and that at the level of Parliament or at the level of the state should be enough for Parliament to pass laws that are in a certain way as balanced as possible. The net impact of a policy decision, a law or regulation on the collective welfare can only be assessed by the universally adopted approach of impact analysis. How many of our laws and regulations were subjected to the rigor of impact analysis, whether their net result will advance or set back communal welfare? As you see from this statement, the main point is that we're looking for communal welfare. We're not really looking for the very narrow interest of a certain business group. We want to conduct the impact analysis on the basis of communal welfare. Meeting indiscriminately all the elements of the myriad of pressure groups that constitute society is neither the proper role of statesmanship, nor is it feasible in practice. as different groups have conflicting interests and aspirations. Good governance, therefore, requires granting various interest groups the dose of concessions that would generate the highest level of societal welfare. That maybe brings us to the economic concept of Pareto optimality. That is, as lobbyists, as business groups, we look at not hurting other people, not hurting the interests of other people, but let us look at what we can add without hurting the others. If we can manage to enact laws that help certain groups without hurting other groups, then that is contributing to the welfare of the society. That exercise in optimization is never easy, or should it be said, never possible to achieve. Suffice for lawmakers to strive to reach the highest realizable level of communal welfare. Thank you.